online event. Really appreciate everyone here for taking time to attend this event to hear about digital rights in North Korea. My name is Sunny, a board member of Interlab. I'm going to moderate this session today about digital rights in North Korea. So this event is hosted by the People for Successful Korean Reunification and organized as an NGO side event for the UNHRC 49th session. So the People for Successful Korean Reunification, PSCORE is a short name, is an organization which advocates for the reunification of the Korean Peninsula and the improvement of human rights in the DPRK, which has held a special consultative status with the UN Economic and Social Council since 2012. PSCORE has previously published a variety of reports regarding human rights in DPRK, discussing topics such as children's rights and the nation's education system. The 2021 report presents information and examples of the digital rights suppression in the DPRK, explaining the impact the suppression has on the nation's citizens and the need for international laws guaranteeing access to digital tools and platforms inside the country. PSCORE released the report, Digital Rights in North Korea, the New Frontier of Human Rights in 2021, shedding light on the DPRK suppression of digital rights. This side event will discuss the findings of the report and provide some personal experiences of digital usage and suppression inside the DPRK. Okay, I'm going to introduce the program of today. This event will share with you the key findings of the report, covering a summary, the technical aspects of it, and the current state of North Korean digital rights. There are 6 speakers for this event, including 2 North Korean defectors. I will briefly introduce them to you now. Tae-hoon Kim, President of PSCORE, Nam, Secretary General of PSCORE, Christina Kuhn, Researcher of PSCORE, Michelle Choi, CEO and Technical Program Manager of Interlab, Huichang Ro, a North Korean defector who was a former executive of North Korea Labor Party, Gunil Kim, a North Korea defector who was former student of North Korea's top engineering university and a scientist. The first presentation will be given by Nam, Secretary General at PSCORE, who led the process of this research project. He will give an explanation of the research production, background, process, and meaning. Please welcome Nam.
Hello, I'm Nam, Secretary General of PSCORE. It is a great pleasure for me to present about digital human rights in North Korea, and I want to thank all of you for being here. I've been working in PSCORE since 2010, and since then, there have been a lot of changes. Our organization has made a huge leap from raising awareness on North Korean human rights issues domestically to contributing internationally as a special consultative NGO for UN Economic and Social Council. In the early days of PSCORE, we exchanged information among our staff through uploading and downloading files on our homepage notice board, and now we are using a variety of online collaboration tools such as Google Drive, Dropbox, Notion, and Stack. And when the COVID-19 crisis got worse, we were able to conduct all work online. Like this, on a global scale, we are facing rapid digital transformation, yet North Korea chooses to remain backward. If North Korea would just open its doors, it could see an end to hunger. Adapting new digital technology could mean better living standards. However, North Korea rejects all changes and is solely focused on maintaining its current political system. This troubled me for a long time. So I took interest in researching more and more on North Korea's digital reality, including digging into foreign sources. I was surprised to encounter abundant research material emphasizing North Korea's technical aspects alone, ranging from surveillance technology and native digital devices to internet censorship and file tracing systems. Despite being very valuable information to the North Korean human rights community, the information was nowhere to be found in Korean, nor were there any sources explaining how these technical realities related to international human rights standards. As a result, since 2019, our organization embarked on the task of creating a digital human rights report on North Korea, which was not without hardships. The International Convention on Civil and Political Rights, ICCPR, and International Convention on Economic, Social and Cultural Rights, ICSCR, have yet to detail digital human rights, and those discussions have just begun in recent years. Last July, the UN Human Rights Council passed a resolution on emergent digital technology and human rights, which reaffirmed the importance of taking a holistic and inclusive approach to address the impacts, opportunities, and challenges of new technologies in promoting human rights. The resolutions on the promotion, protection, and enjoyment of human rights on the internet in 2018, and new and emerging digital technologies and human rights in 2019, urged the need to discuss the digital divide between developed and developing countries. We know that currently, UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres is working hard to establish and develop the concept of digital human rights as a fundamental international human right. In 2018, high-level digital panelists from around the world convened at a large-scale conference on digital cooperation. And in 2019, the Age of Digital Interdependence report laid out a series of recommendations on how the international community may benefit from digital human rights and technology. The concept of human rights, including privacy and freedom of expression, were already widespread before the start of the internet. However, human rights violations were simply confined to visible sanctions and violence. Human rights violations in the cyber world, which cannot be as easily identified, are still an abstract concept to most people. There are no international rules within human rights that specify digital human rights in the form of ICCPR or ICCSCR, as previously mentioned. Therefore, our organization decided to produce a digital human rights report, which came out last year, highlighting the human rights aspects of the digital rights issue in North Korea. Our main objectives were to create an understanding for the current digital situation and the meaning of digital human rights in North Korea. We commenced the research for this report in 2019, and it was finalized in 2021. Before the increasing development of the internet worldwide, we used to talk about IT, which is in short, information technologies. And now we talk about ICT, which means information and communications technologies. This shows a trend of change in how important communication is in the digital environment. The internet enables a person to access endless information and the possibility to communicate using search engines and social media. North Korea remains one of the countries with the most controlled internet access in the world. There are advanced techniques that are adapted by the North Korean government to control their citizens. This will be presented by our experts today in this side event. I believe that the trend of linking digital rights and human rights will continue to increase, and digital human rights in North Korea must continue to be discussed, brought attention to, and researched about. Therefore, I want to shed light on this very important matter to our international audiences. UN Special Rapporteur on the situation of human rights in the DPRK, commented on his interactive dialogue session yesterday on the 49th UN Human Rights Council session. I believe that the ongoing deterioration of the human rights situation within the DPR Korea is linked to the country's ever-increasing isolation from the international community. We also have the same idea, and this is what we need to work together internationally. Thank you for listening and joining us for this event.
Thank you, Mr. Nam, for giving a great overview of the report. The next speaker is Christina Kuhn, researcher at PSCORE, who was the main researcher of this project. She will provide a report summary and explanation. Please welcome Christina Kuhn.
Yes, thank you very much. So my name is Christina Kunz, and I'm the main author of the Digital Rights Report, and I'm very happy to be here and promote this topic in this capacity again. So of course, we were aware that contextualization of each human right would be almost a Herculean feat, so we decided to narrow them down to 6 specific rights that aligned most with our research focus and were related to primary data that we had already collected through defector interviews. So as such, we decided to select right to privacy, right to freedom of opinion and expression, right to freedom of thought, right to education, and the right to an adequate standard of living, and the right to participate in cultural life. So of course, us choosing these 6 rights does not mean that we are of the opinion that other human rights are not equally important to the debate around digital rights, or that the DPRK is currently fulfilling those rights in a satisfying manner. It simply leaves further room for more research. So here I urge you to read the report in its entirety to get a complete picture of the situation. Talking about human rights, we have to acknowledge, of course, that while in most countries they are seen as inherent and that humans have innate value simply by nature of being, I'm sure most of you know, this is not the case in the DPRK. So even though the DPRK has acceded to both the ICESCR and the ICCPR, it has continuously violated these conventions. So digital rights, as we understand them, are an extension of human rights, which is why we felt it necessary to reflect the technological developments and consequent changes in the perception of human rights and also oppression by the state. Even now, the international human rights legislature struggles to truly reflect digital rights in all its facets. And also what is required to protect citizens online. So 2021 has seen, of course, the emergence of various resolutions in relation to digital rights, especially children's rights and early development. We really hope to give some more guidance on what kind of legal framework is needed in order to adapt to the digital age, tackle the digital divide, and safeguard the North Korean citizenry. So I will begin to contextualize digital rights by explaining the right to privacy a bit more in depth. While this has conventionally referred to non-interference by the state by way of family matters and unlawfulness of surveillance, the digital sphere has complicated this right by introducing a way for the state to collect data on a much larger and more intrusive scale. Of course, the UN has been updating its human rights legislature to reflect potential effects of the internet on human rights in general. However, specific data on the DPRK is still scarce. The DPRK's own constitution states that citizens have a right to privacy at home and bans arbitrary surveillance. But here we note that the DPRK considers surveillance of the home and any digital device as a necessary means to ensure that opposition to the regime is suppressed, and thus interference into the private life of the citizen is a lawful security measure. The level of government surveillance is thus unprecedented. So similar to the right to privacy, the right to education has been discussed in detail throughout the last 2 years as a result, of course, of COVID-19, as online access has become essential during this time. However, when internet access is limited to an elite group of people, as it is in the DPRK, and the content available online and through education is heavily restricted and distorted, it prevents not only effective schooling, but of course, in turn, also hinders social, political, economic development, as citizens cannot utilize the internet in order to develop their own skills. Consequently, a restriction to the right to education directly influences the quality of life, life expectancy, health, and even the ability to form independent thought. But I want to move on to some other human rights that may have not been considered from a digital angle before. So here we would look at the right to freedom of opinion and expression, the right to freedom of thought, and the right to cultural life. And we can quickly ascertain that the DPRK does their utmost to prevent its citizens from forming critical opinions, as I mentioned, questioning their ideology, and even sharing potential revolutionary ideas with others. But the question we really need to ask ourselves here is, how does this connect to the digital realm? So digital access and the ability to exchange opinions, ideologies with large groups of people online is an intrinsic part, of course, of the 21st century for most people. However, in the DPRK, where no ideology other than the 10 great principles of the establishment of a monolithic ideology based on Jutse ideology is allowed, North Koreans are prevented from forming any sense of morality and belief without the interference of the state. As foreign media is banned and available media on the internet is hard to access for the majority of people and is largely state propaganda and heavy distortion of history and current events, the DPRK government has a clear aim of safeguarding the status quo. The internet is a dangerous tool in the hands of revolutionaries, according to the DPRK government. There is a strong belief between North Korean defectors that internet access and unrestricted dissemination of outside information would lead to a full collapse of the regime, as the mindset of most North Koreans would immediately change. Let me quote one of our interviewees. If North Korea gained access to the internet, most people's thought would change. They would feel betrayed. It would just be a matter of time. Everyone will change. Thus, digital cultural life leads to cultural convergence that can be described as a sense of global culture, which has become, of course, a side effect of globalization. Without a digital connection, North Koreans can't participate in this diverse culture, and they have to rely on the state to provide any and all information, facts, materials, etc., which fosters, of course, xenophobia and leads to heavy indoctrination. In this current state, the restriction of internet access leads to ability to develop political ideas, critical thought, and to take it one step further, prevents organization of large-scale protests offline. Next, I would like to discuss democratization through digital media and empowerment. Within a democratic country, access to digital media and as such digital rights tend to be guaranteed. North Korea, however, is of course only a democracy by name, as elections are neither free nor fair. No party other than the Workers' Party can be elected, and the only candidate is the current leader of the Kim regime. In democracies, governments can use technology in order to further their country's economies, to increase the standard, and generally just positively influence the lives of its citizenry. But in the DPRK, the benefits of internet access are only felt by the regime and an elite class of people. A majority of the funding for the technological realm is spent on the furtherment of nuclear weapons and hacking capabilities, while citizens have to fight for survival through black markets and contraband. In recent years, e-empowerment, as was seen, for example, in the Tunisian revolution, has become a more prevalent form of protest towards democratization. This means that internet access makes it easier to organize like-minded people, disseminate information, escalate protests nationwide, and so on. Many scholars and North Korean defectors believe that the dissemination of such external information would eventually lead to political change in the country in a sort of bottom-to-top protest movement. The Kim regime is, of course, well aware of digital media's threat to their power and have tightened restrictions even further, especially in the last 2 years, and implemented more severe punishments for the consumption of media, especially foreign media and South Korean media. So access to such digital devices and information enables citizens to form their own opinion about the government's ruling system and keep the government officials accountable in return, a right every person in the world should be entitled to. We hope that this has highlighted the importance of digital rights being anchored in the human rights legislature, and we wish for North Korean people to become more empowered and realize their own rights. Contrasting the limited digital access that North Korean people have, the government uses digital devices far more than other developed countries to monitor, censor, and isolate its citizens. The international community must work towards this goal with a united stance, which is why at the end of our report, we had provided both recommendations to the international community as well as the DPRK as a guidance towards necessary steps for realization of digital rights. If I may quote UN Secretary General Guterres, "Together, as we seek to recover from the pandemic, We must learn to better curtail harmful use of digital technology and to better unleash its power as a democratizing force and an enabler. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Christina, for nicely summarizing the report and highlighting the key findings from it. The next speaker is Michelle Che, CEO of Interlab. Michelle will give an explanation of technical aspects of the report. Please welcome Michelle.
Hello, everyone. My name is Michelle Choi. I'm in charge of technology at Interlab, which is an organization working for protecting and promoting digital rights in Asia. It was my pleasure to be able to review and support PSCORE's report on digital rights in North Korea. And also thanks for the invitation to speak in this event to introduce technical details on the report. In this limited time that I'm given, I'm going to pinpoint some of the elements that are closely connected to technical parts of this report. First, I'm going to talk about the freedom of communication and information. When it comes to freedom of communication and information, North Korea is unique. Only a small number of elites, foreign correspondents, or embassy staff can access the internet. Furthermore, only the selected number of libraries at top universities offer internet access devices. However, even when you are able to access such libraries, a person linked with the government will stand next to you and monitor what you do while surfing on the web. Next, I would like to move on to intranet. Before we begin, I'm going to simply compare between internet and intranet. As you all know, there is no limitation when it comes to accessing the World Wide Web if you use the internet. But the intranet is closed, insular network. Only insiders can use the net, and in vice versa, websites of intranet can only serve users of closed network. For example, you can compare this to the private network of military systems where only military personnel can access. In North Korea, intranet is being used by slightly more people compared to internet. College students, Pyongyang residents, or government staff are now utilizing the intranet. They can either go to intranet cafe, a public library, or post office. However, as I mentioned during the comparison between internet and intranet, no outsider can access the intranet, and the only websites they can visit are propaganda medias and some online shopping malls and newspapers. Furthermore, these websites have to get approved by the North Korean governments to be able to exist on the intranet. Of course, there are some restrictions and shutdown process in other countries as well, because each government wants to make sure that there is no violent or sexually abusive content distributed. But the difference between North Korea and the most of other countries is the basis of regulation on the intranet of North Korea are not clearly defined. They are not transparent at all on which contents are blocked and why they are blocked. And the punishment for contravening them is very heavy. As a result, I would say that North Korean intranet is shrinking freedom of expression in the country. Now, I would like to move on to the issue of privacy in North Korea. When you take a look at the digital devices in North Korea, they use their own unique operating system called Resta OS, which is a modified version of Linux. This operating system is installed in the device by default, and there is a unique function to prevent any tampering of operating system functions. Even when a very small amount of source code in the operating system gets modified, the Resta OS will detect and remove it and restore back to its original state through device reboot if needed. Regarding on why such anti-tampering system would exist in the North Korean devices, we need to take a look at the watermark system that is also defaultly embedded into devices. This watermark system basically creates signature of every files in the devices and compare these signatures with government-created signature database. It allows system to detect existence of any unauthorized files in the application and also remove these from device accordingly. Furthermore, as signatures store not only files information, but also device's serial number, the watermark system is also being used to access how unauthorized files has been distributed, by which devices, and after identifying device's owner, then it also identifies who. I would like to also talk about how North Korean citizens' devices are directly linked with their identity. In the DPRK, to own a computer or smartphone, you are required to get a permit. In government's perspective, this permitting process allows connecting digital devices with all the personal information of the owner. For example, who owns which devices. Hence, when a device with intranet connection opens unauthorized file, the government has capacity and all the information they can have to remotely detect the devices with bad behavior and also identify its owner to punish. Also, as government officials can randomly raid and come up to any persons to screen their home and devices, the bad behavior of offline devices can also be detected and punished. To summarize, the watermark system protected by anti-tampering system and also the overall offline control, including device permit and random raids, are the measures that the North Korean government is utilizing to control the use of digital devices and to constrain the freedom of citizens in the country. In other words, these systems are adopted to streamline their control and surveillance measures, and this is closely affecting digital rights of North Korean citizens, especially freedom of information and expression, when we also take account of such limited accessibility of internet and intranet. As we can see from North Korean cases, technological advancement and distribution in a society does not necessarily entail the advancement on freedom of information and communication, especially when the technical advancement proceeds within society without protection of digital rights. It can rather advance surveillance capacity with unprecedented detailed information, resulting in maintenance of status quo with increased efficiency. However, I believe it is not an exaggeration to say that such phenomenon of advancement in surveillance capacity exists in other countries as well, although with different level or measures. Hence, I'd like to end my time with my humble request to you all that taking in consideration with extreme case that brought to you by North Korea, please keep an eye on your society as well, on these technological directions, and also participate in defining what is digital right with your perspective. Thank you for listening.
Thank you very much, Michelle, for walking us through the technical aspects of the report. And the next speaker is Tae-hoon Kim, the president of PSCORE and a lawyer. Mr. Kim will present about the current state of North Korean digital rights from an international law perspective. Please welcome Mr. Kim.
Hello, I am Kim Tae-hoon, president of PSCORE. In addition to leading PSCORE, I am also leading the Lawyers for Human Rights and Unification of Korea as an honorary chairman. It is my great pleasure to be able to participate in this side event. Many of the previous presenters spoke about the technologies or the general environment of North Korean residents. But now I'd like to take a look at the legal aspects in regards to the digital rights in North Korea. First of all the rights that people have offline, especially freedom of expression stipulated in Article 19 of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights and of the ICCPR, must be protected. Secondly, we must firmly condemn human rights violations against those who exercise their rights on the internet and ensure that all countries are held accountable for their violations. it should be recognized that the globalized internet is the driving force behind the promotion of various forms of development, including the achievement of everyone's sustainable development goals. In order for everyone to enjoy human rights, efforts should be accelerated to reduce the information gap, increase the use of information technology, and strengthen access to internet information through education, and apply comprehensive human rights-based access. Now, I'm going to talk about how North Korea is infringing on human rights related to digital elements. Freedom of expression in the North Korean Constitution says that citizens shall have the freedom of speech, publication, assembly, demonstration, and association. However, in December 2020, the law on the elimination of reactionary thought and culture was enacted. This law includes punishments such as the death penalty for simply accessing information, in particular foreign content. In addition to an already existing culture of surveillance and reporting on fellow citizens, in September 2021, the authorities introduced tip-off rewards and reporting on fellow citizens. In September 2021, the authorities introduced tip-off rewards, which rewards citizens with cash for reporting so-called anti-socialist behaviors. This new addition further undermines trust and solidarity between the citizens in the DPRK. The limits of digital technologies initiated by the North Korean government to their residents is a clear violation of human rights. If you look at the cultural participation of North Korea residents, Article 74 of the North Korean Constitution stipulates that citizens have the freedom to engage in science, literature, and arts. But the reality is the opposite. All the novels, plays, songs, and poems that are not suitable for public indoctrination are accessible only to a small number of experts, and they are not familiar with digital technology as well. So they remain isolated without any cultural exchanges with their international community and cannot participate in cultural life. In modern times, digital technology has given more people and groups access to the information and the tools needed to increase political productivity, so-called digital empowerment. Digital media has the potential to spark the North Korean revolution, and the Kim dynasty is desperately preventing digital capabilities and the realization of digital human rights. It is important to recognize digital human rights as an essential part of human rights, to start acting as a watchdog and to pressure countries like North Korea to implement digital human rights for their citizens. In the future, the report of the UN Special Rapporteur on North Korean human rights, the resolution of the UN Human Rights Council, and the General Assembly on North Korean human rights should be emphasized, including the protection of digital human rights. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Kim, for a great presentation. And the next speaker is Huichang Ro, former executive of North Korea Labor Party. Mr. Ro will give an explanation of the current state of and the restriction on the internet usage in the DPRK. This presentation will be provided in Korean. So if you need any English interpretation, please choose the interpretation setting in the bottom of the screen. Okay, please welcome Huichang Ro.
네, 안녕하세요.
Hello, my name is Huichang Ro. I am the director of a North Korean human rights related organization, and I'm also teaching students as well at a college. And I would like to thank President Tae-hoon Kim and Secretary General Bada Nam for inviting me to this event. I used to work as an executive in the Labor Party of North Korea. And when I was overseas, there was an incident, and instead of going back to North Korea, I decided to flee to South Korea. And today, I would like to talk about the use of the internet. As you can see, the internet is not accessible by general public. It's only given to a few elites, such as leaders in the party, professors, or some professionals. And I know that there are some foreign correspondents staying in Pyongyang, but they can have to go to their own embassies to be able to access the internet. That's the only space where they can search online. If anyone wants to use the internet, they have to get a pre-approval from the North Korean government. And there are some companies who are engaging in trading, but only a specific department of such companies can access the internet. For example, a leader or like a trade manager or a specific person who are allowed by the government will be able to use the internet in a very limited and restricted environment. And also, and if you are arbitrarily using internet, you'll be punished and will go through some disciplinary action imposed by the government. So I can say that even party leaders cannot freely use the internet. Only in a certain circumstance they will be able to access it. But it's not like they're generally using it day-to-day lives. And I think, but secretly, some citizens are finding some ways to use the internet. But I think the level of the access could differ depending on their financial standings and means as well. So I want to state that, of course, the internet goes into the North Korean society. Even though the convenience will be increased, I think the current regime will be threatened by the use of the internet because people will realize that what the government tells them is totally different from what is actually happening outside North Korea. That's what the Labor Party thinks. That's what the North Korean government thinks. They know that once the internet is given as an option to their residents, it'll be really, really difficult for them to maintain the status quo. So basically, when you come to South Korea for the first time, you don't know anyone here, and you learn about the society through the internet. And as you learn more about what the reality is, you learn about a democracy, a true democracy, and you feel a great sense of betrayal about the leaders that you had served back in North Korea. And you can see that different materials or information is given to even the ones who are dispatched to foreign countries if you're North Koreans. Like you constantly get messages from the government that say, if you dare to use the internet, then this punishment will be given to you. So now let me talk about the media prohibition law of North Korea. The Labor Party has a strong will to maintain socialism and communism in the society. And if you look at the new law that came in 2010, you can see that building on from the existing law that was banning the use of the internet, they want to make the access more limited because that just they know that using the internet will be a greater threat for their regime. And the fact that they keep revising the laws over and over is showing their stance, the change in the stance about the internet. And when we hear human rights here in back in North Korea, they don't really think that human rights is a great asset to residents. What the government say is that capitalist society is it so worse that basic human rights are not provided properly, that they had to create this notion of human rights so that residents are given a basic level of living standards. So North Korean citizens tend to think that human rights, the notion or the concept of human rights, is not something that's necessary. It's something that's created by capitalism. So when you come to South Korea, or you understand what it means to be totally free, what it means to eat what you want, read what you want to read, understand and learn about what you want to study. And you truly realize the value of human rights and freedom once you're given the freedom. That's my own experience after I came to South Korea. Yeah, this is all I have to say. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ro, for sharing your experience with the restricted access to the internet in North Korea. The next and the last speaker is Gunil Kim, a former student of North Korea's top engineering university and a scientist. Mr. Kim will give an explanation of the digital device usages of the PRK young generation and the government surveillance. His presentation will be also provided in English. In Korean. Please welcome Mr. Kim.
I'm Gunil. Thank you very much for inviting me to this meaningful meeting. Once again, I'm very grateful that so many people are paying attention to the human rights of North Koreans. I will share with you the reality of digital human rights in North Korea that I experienced it while attending university in North Korea. 전에 많은 분들이 인터넷 사용에 대해서 이제 얘기했기 때문에
Yeah, because so many other participants talked about the use of the internet. I'm going to talk about how university students in North Korea are using the internet and accessing the internet. And I would also like to talk about the watermark system. Oh, I can take off the mask? Okay, thank you. I'll do that. So I'm going to talk about mainly 3 points today. So I remember from 2016, phones were distributed and popularized in North Korea. And I think from 2017 or so, 1 out of 10 university students had phones. And laptops as well spread slowly. And for tablets or other digital devices, they came in, but maybe slower and later. I think most of them used these devices. And including my own university, North Korean college students, they can't access the internet. There are only a few students who can, I would say maybe they can do it if they want to participate in an international contest or competition. And even when they do so, uh, if they are not going to go out of the country to use the internet, there is like a separate space in the government where they have to go and then participate in that specific international contest or competition. And for tablet, laptop, phones, I will say these are three main types of digital devices. And the common operating system is the green, is not something that North Korea created. Most students use the Windows operating system. I think I used Windows 10, maybe. I think I remember. And this Green Star, this proprietary system is used by the party, the government organizations. So because we use Windows, we can use Word, PowerPoint, and Excel as well. Yeah, I use them too. And now I'd like to talk about media accessibility. When you say media access in North Korea, there is actually not a media content that you can access. All you can access is some very, very outdated, old-fashioned movies that the government created 20, 30 years ago. And then I think we hated it. We really didn't like enjoying the content. So as a result, we are drawn to Korean dramas, Korean pop culture, and also American movies. We would buy them in a black market behind the scenes and would watch them. So among university students, when you watch media content, you can basically understand what is going on outside Korea, and you can see the punishment level that you might be exposed to in North Korea is the highest level of punishment. I remember last year they created a new law so that the punishment level is up to extreme, the highest level of punishment. So you can see that what they're afraid is that if the young leaders, which are university students, if they're exposed to outside information, they're going to change their mindset, political stance, and they think that the reason why Soviet Union or Eastern European countries, the reason that communism or socialism collapsed there was because of the access to the internet by young adults, and that is why they are extremely dreading of the situation where people access the internet, especially young people. And maybe that is why the North Korean university students, they ban and prohibit any free use of time. They're afraid that if university students have free time to do whatever they want, then they can just talk or develop like a free and open thought or approach. So what they do is after classes are done every day, they can't go out. We are not allowed to go out the campus. If you want to go out of the campus, you have to go to a specific department and report the reason to leave. You have to get an approval from your school to get out of the campus. For this reason, to go see a doctor, I need to go out, something like that. And for those who have watched Korean media or other foreign content, if you don't have any connection, if your parents or families are not powerful, then you'll be punished. But if you have money, if your family is powerful and influential, then they can utilize many different ways to watch dramas, and they will also be able to get away from punishment. If you think about my case, didn't watch, I wasn't able to watch it so many times, but a few times, yes. I was exposed to these content, and I was not caught, thankfully. And when I was in college, many of my friends were caught, and I saw them getting punished. And I also saw one friend getting criminal punishment. Yes, I saw all those cases even around me too, personally. And in Korea, in North Korea, there is the surveillance department, and my friend who had a connection in that surveillance department, even though my friend watched Korean dramas, he just utilized that connection and got away with it. So the poor friends, friends who do not have connection, they can't watch movies. But if you belong to elite class, if you're rich in the society, then they tend to just enjoy those content without worrying too much. So I just talked about how North Korea is violating human rights when it comes to access to media. And if you want to watch content, then you need USB or specific chips, right? And whether it's SD card or USBs, the sizes of those devices are quite small. So you can basically hide them somewhere around you. And what happens is that in universities in North Korea, they want to manage and control them. And as a way to control them, you have to put like a label that says the ownership, the owner of the device, who lent the specific device to who, like all this history and information is written in the back of the device. And whenever you borrow or lend a USB device, you have to report it. And then you have to turn it in to a department or office so that they can check what's being transmitted and transferred. So as a result, media exposure was decreased accordingly. You can see that North Korea is very effectively controlling the spread of media content. And in addition, for example, when I lived in North Korea, even if you have no tangible evidence, Korean government officials can go to my friend, be able to go to my friend's house and raid and scrutinize the space. And there is a specific tool that they use too. Even all little traces from 2-3 years ago would be caught if you use this tool. They can basically investigate and scrutinize my friend's device. And then if anything's there, then you will go to a jail or get punished. So it's not just a passive form of control. They would actually go to your houses and homes to control the access to the internet by university students. And also to talk about watermark system that is deployed by North Korea, it's sort of a filtering system, screening system. And in North Korea, inside the phones, if there's like a high quality video coming into a device, then you automatically basically block the play of this video. And if you use a specific watermark in North Korea, let's say I try to open a PDF file that has names related to South Korean content, then this watermark system will automatically turn on so that no inflow of files are happening. However, our university students came up with a way to go through this firewall. We basically invented and discovered a way to go around it. So what we did was we processed this APPF file so that the screening system cannot judge or see that there is this file that they have to screen. So that way we accessed games, and we also listened to songs and downloaded them to our phones. So we kind of transmitted this way, and basically very successfully blocked the control of the government. And another point I want to make here is games, or there are some games that North Korean government created by themselves, and these programs would be distributed by some local centers. It's like a branch office of the Ministry of IT in North Korea. And if you pay like 5,000 North Korean won or 10,000 North Korean won, then you can update your program or device into a new version so that you can access more content.
Now all presentations have ended, and we will move to a Q&A session time. We will go through the questions submitted by the participants. Okay, I just received the question from an anonymous attendee. I read that Kim Jong-un has accelerated the persecution of those who dare to watch foreign films or series. Before him, people were mostly killed for being political criminals. Now people are killed only for watching even one video on the internet. So how can you explain this change of course and behavior from Kim Jong-un? So I think this question goes to either Mr. No or Mr. Kim Gunil. Who would like to answer?
제가 얘기해도 될까요?
네.
Can I speak? Yes. So if you think about the Kim Jong-il regime, it was more loose, definitely, and lax. We had more freedom to watch content. But what's different about Kim Jong-un's regime is that they are very sensitive about how young adults are viewing the regime. Kim Jong-un's age is very similar to our age. So they are afraid that us, young adults, are going to be the ones who will basically be the residents and will serve the regime until the end, right? And just like how 20s and 30s here in Korea are leading the changes of the society, they are afraid that if young adults in North Korea are realizing the reality and how things are outside, they think that they're going to start a revolution or something. So they're afraid that young adults in North Korea will fantasize about capitalism in South Korea or America, and they think that young adults will doubt the legitimacy of the North Korean regime as a result. So they want young adults to only know about and learn about Kim Jong-un as their leader and also the Juche regime as well. So Kim Jong-un already emphasized that this is something that we can't compromise. We are not going to let this happen. And he said that even a rolling a rock or stone will be contaminated eventually. What this idiom means is that back in Kim Jong-il's time, only 3 times a week we would be gathered to learn about the regime. Whereas now, 5 days out of a week, we are gathered to talk about the regime. So he just wants to show that we care about young adults. I'm very interested in supporting you. So please support me. That's his logic. 네.
The next question also seems to go to the two North Korean defectors. So the question, I will read it. I have heard that people living on the Chinese borders sometimes have more access to certain media information from outside. So I wanted to know if this is really a fact and if there is a big difference between those North Koreans living near China and other North Korean citizens. Mr. Gunil or Mr. Huichang 선생님, could maybe answer this question?
네, 제가 좀 말씀드리죠.
Yeah, let me answer this question. Yes, there's a big difference and gap between people who live near China or Russia versus inlanders. Because people who live near the borders around China or Russia, you can get some signals, Wi-Fi signals from that country. So they can basically freely watch anything. But you have to understand that you have to make sure that you're not scrutinized by the government official. So, when you want to talk to people who are already in South Korea, then you would talk to your family in South Korea. You will go up to the mountain so that you make sure that no one's around you, and then you would make a call to your family members in South Korea. And you can hear about what's happening in China. You can hear about what's happening in South Korea as well. So definitely people who live near borders, they have a better idea about China, South Korea, Russia, for sure. So there is a big gap and difference. And if you come to South Hamgyong, like Namgangdo, Shineuju, or Chagangdo, or Haesan, Yanggangdo Island, or Gwangjang, Onsong, these areas are relatively flexible, right? But except for these areas, I wouldn't say there's media access.
Thank you for the answer. And there's another question. I think this is for Christina. Hello, thank you for your presentation. I would like to know if it was difficult to access some information while writing this report, because it could be a struggle to access some data concerning North Korea society.
Okay, yes, I can answer that. That's right. Of course, it can be quite difficult to find some of the data, seeing as we are based here in South Korea, and especially internet access to certain North Korean websites, or even websites consisting of information regarding North Korea are blocked to us. So what we did in that case is either access through, if it was possible, VPN access, or we had Chinese researchers who could access those sites looking at information for us, so colleagues from China. But aside from the technical information and some of the information that we needed to confirm from like official websites, we were lucky in the sense that our report was based on defector testimony. So what I mean with that is that in order to write this report, and the large majority of the report is actually or was created through interviews with North Korean defectors. So we had various interviews and surveys that we worked on with North Korean defectors. And so we created this report from first-hand testimony. So a lot of the information that you will find in the report and in the debate around it is actually just first-hand information. So yes, while it was difficult to find reliable information, and we do have to be careful on the information that is on the web regarding North Korea, it is certainly possible to find information, and we do have reliable sources that we can access, but we are kind of priding ourselves on writing the report on the basis of testimony, direct testimony, if that makes sense.
Yes. Thank you. And are there any other questions? Hearing the lawyer's speech, the North Korean government seems to break the national law of humanity. Can the UN punish North Korea? Maybe this can go to Mr. Tae-hoon Kim.
But now it is not so easy because we tried many times, but without National Security Council, we have to bring that case to the ICC, International Criminal Court. But according to the Rome statutes, without Security Council's referral, we cannot bring that case to the ICC. So now, practically, it is impossible now.
Yeah, thank you for the answer.
Thank you.
Okay, oh, there's another question in Korean. I will read it in Korean.
그럼
감사합니다. 북한
Yeah.
학생들은 디지털
thank you very much for your presentations. Then what kind of digital education does do the North Korean students get? When do they use tablet PC? How do they learn about how to use computers? From what grade do they start learning about how to use digital devices? And is digital education an essential element of North Korean education? Is there a gap between rural area or urban area digital usage? And I think Gunil, you can answer this question. Should I? Okay. I think you are asking a question about digital education. I think from 9th grade, you learn about digital devices. I remember. But after Kim Jong-un took office, I think from grade 1, you learn about digital devices or world. And yes, it is an essential element of North Korean public education. There's coding, education. You can also learn how to use PowerPoint. Yeah, that's being taught in North Korea. And also about the gap, digital gap between cities and rural areas. I think it's just too diverse, depending on what cities you're talking about. If it's a difference between Pyongyang versus other cities, yes, there is a difference. And if you say rural areas or local cities, yeah, there are some big ones like Sinuiju, Cheongjin, right? And I think if you're talking about a really, really remote area or rural city, there are houses where they don't even have a cell phone. And in those rural areas, I believe there's no phones. Of course, no computers too, because if they don't have phones, how would they have computers? And one time I walked to Pungsori, that was Pungso-gun. It was a very rural town, and I saw that there's not even like a TV. So I was like, wow, this is very, very different from where I live, because I lived in a suburb in Pyongyang. What I experienced, working there or living there was very, very different from rural and remote areas of North Korea. I think there are many residents who wouldn't even know the word digital here now in North Korea.
Thank you for answering.
That's everything.
This question is very interesting to hear digital environment in North Korea. Any other questions? Any last questions? Okay. Then this time I will really try to wrap up. But before closing, we'll I would like to give some information about where to find this report and the video of this meeting. So PSCORE will publish the recorded video of this side event on PSCORE's YouTube channel, and also send printed copies of the report to UNHRC member states. If anyone also wants to get a hard copy, please email at PSCORE, PSCORE @pscore.org. You can find digital versions in English or Korean on the PSCORE's website too. Okay, thank you everyone for attending this event, and great presentation from the speakers. I hope everyone have a great day. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
감사합니다.
Thank you.